All right, welcome to the Apex Vaulting Podcast. We have a very special guest today. I'm so grateful. Scott Kendricks is with us today, and Scott, I obviously know who you are. I think a lot of people who listen to this will know who you are, but maybe you want to give a little bit of background on who you are. And I think you coached someone that recently had a pretty big meet or two.
Well, I coach Sam Kendricks, and I've been Sam's coach for 18 years. Before that,
Right.
I was just a high school coach here in a small town, in a college town in the South. And my goal was to have an elite high school track and field program. And
Mhm.
that's kind of the path that we were on. We had All Americans in the sprints, the
Okay.
relays. I had a national champion in the high jump, guy that went, to World Juniors and got a medal. And we had some elite kids, and I coached some really cool athletes at our school, and I never expected that one of my own
Ah,
would probably be the most elite kid that
right.
came out of there, because quite honestly, I had kids on our high school team that played in the NFL.
Right.
And so Sam and his twin brother Tom, they were out there every day with me from the time they were in kindergarten, and they learned so many events. And so when they got to the high school level, we kind of specialized. Tommy was a thrower, Sam was a pole vaulter.
Okay.
And sort of like by necessity, Sam, his
I'm just
desire to
curious.
be
I
good.
didn't I didn't know about the brother Tommy. What events did he throw? Did he do all the throwing events?
Tom was primarily a discus thrower, and that's the weird thing. If you ask anybody locally who the real stud athlete in our family is, they would say Tom,
Right.
because Tom was he was a three-sport letter guy in high
Okay.
school, like multiple years, and Sam didn't really come into his own until he was a senior.
Okay.
He won state as a junior, but Tom was the guy that was in the paper all the time and all
Mhm.
that, and they were very obviously very competitive, but they had different body types. They're fraternal twins, and
Okay.
Tom is really jacked. He's a really
Okay.
muscular guy, and Sam was kind of a slender guy like me,
Hmm.
and sort of a background on that situation. Tom was always going to make the team.
Right.
Tom was just a stud. Sam, on the other hand, was short, slow, and weak. And I was really concerned about him ever being able to make my track team, because we had a pretty elite
Wow.
program.
Hmm.
I mean, my third year of coaching here, our school district built this beautiful facility and everything. And we won state like 4 out of 6 years
Wow.
when these boys were out there as kids with me. And we won it a bunch of times after that. But I was concerned Sam wouldn't even make the team,
That.
because we had skills tests. We like standing long jump, 40 sprint, and I think vertical. And I
Right.
think we ran 300 meters for time. And that was kind of our 4-part tryout for our team.
Right.
And I'm telling you, it was cutthroat, and
Yeah.
so I said, you know what, Sam?
Just to ask you a couple of questions and give you a little bit of context, I
Yeah.
have to ask one, what is the school size? Because in New Jersey, the way it is, we don't have a lot of like regional high schools. There's a few, but they're not even that big. And we'll
Mhm.
have like schools that are, let's say, group one schools, which are very small. They could be 400 or less students in a
Sure.
school. And then I
Sure.
think we max out at about 2,000. So a lot of times, like what you're describing for a track team, that
Mhm.
almost sounds like most football programs. Whereas
Mm.
here, a lot of the track teams, it's like anybody can be a part of the team, and there's not really the testing going on, which it's crazy. This morning, I was like, kind of tinkering with a couple ideas for posts, and I wanted to do a post with a pyramid and talk about the foundation for the vault. And like a
Uh-huh.
lot of the testing you're talking about, those GPP general preparatory things are super important if you're going to be a good athlete.
Right.
What size school did you coach at? What was that
Well,
like?
when I started, like I said, we're a college town. So,
Mhm.
our high school, when I started coaching, we had about 850 students.
Okay.
And now I think it's up to about 1,200.
Okay.
So it's not one of the bigger schools in the state. It's probably around top 50 in
Okay.
size. So, but there's probably 36. There's another division above Oxford now and that's the 36th biggest school. So we're one division down from the
Okay.
top. But so it's funny because I found out, I was always one thing I did before I started coaching, I was a pilot in the Marine Corps, and it really
Okay.
taught me how to learn and how to do research and really dig in and learn stuff I wanted to learn. And
Mhm.
so some really good coaches gave me some great ideas. My old mentor, my college coach, Joe Walker, gave me some great ideas. And so by harvesting some of these ideas, we put together what turned out to be a pretty good way to select kids. Our
Okay.
program, we had a really strong cross country program. So cross country kids were automatically on the track team because I
Right.
wanted them to keep running. But as far as other athletes, it was pretty much all football guys that were going to come out, and we intentionally made the tryout extremely competitive
Right.
because we wanted the most competitive guys and girls when we had girls, and so by making it super competitive, we got more competitive kids. And I
Right.
remember we had a contest one year. I said, I'm going to give it. I bought this beautiful trophy, fastest boy in Oxford, and one for girls. And I said, we're going to find out after all this trash talking I've been here from football. I want to know who's the fastest guy. We're going to run the 40.
Right.
And so obviously we get the entire skills
Yes.
teams from the football to come out there. And and
Great
uh
idea. This is
and
awesome.
12 of them stayed,
Awesome.
and boy, we really got some athletes out of that.
Hmm.
And so the track tryouts became sort of a thing that people looked into because
Yeah.
they said there's a cut.
Right.
Coach Kendricks, he's going to draw a line, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so and it was fun too because by doing the tests, I could tell a kid, okay, uh, when we tested vertical, the kids with the best vertical, they're your sprinters.
Right. 100%. Yes.
Right. And then the guys in the middle, they're your mid distance guys.
Right.
And then the ones with no vertical, well, that's usually your distance crew.
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
And so I could just tell them, hey kid, you were 4.7 in the 40. I'm just you're gonna have to run the 800.
Right.
You just didn't make the cut to be a sprinter
Wild.
or relays or whatever.
I,
But
I'll tell
anyway,
you what, in my neck of the woods, I think there'd be a lot of schools that they ran a 4.740. They'd be like, "You're running the 100. You're the fastest guy in the team." And it's funny you said about the vertical. This is where, for me, as I coached pole vault, I had to start researching. Okay, well, speed is very important. Who are the
mhm,
leaders in speed? I started looking at, Carl Lewis's career. Then I looked into Ben Johnson and Charlie Francis and a lot of the strength and training that Charlie built, that the
mhm,
strength and conditioning world built off of. Then I kind of branched off and started doing the research and looking into West Side Barbell with Louis Simmons. And Louis Simmons always said, you want to be fast? Vertical leap. The
that's right.
guys who jump the highest are going to be the fastest. And if
There's
your
no
vertical
doubt.
leap increases, you're going to run faster.
And so either they were going to be a sprinter or they were going to be an elite jumper.
Yes.
And we had some kids. We had 4 kids when I was coaching at Oxford that jumped 7 feet or higher in the high jump. I just recruited
Wow.
basketball guys,
Right.
you know, and I became known as sort of a relay jumps coach
Hmm.
until Sam came along. And we had always had good pole vaulters at our state level.
Right.
But Sam being out there, anyway, I pointed him to pole vault in 7th grade because I said, it's going to be tough for you to make even the middle school team.
Right.
And that leads me to another little story about our state. We were the last state to allow girls to pole vault.
Oh, wow.
And I had girls coming out for our team, and they said, I'm a cheerleader. My brother was a pole vaulter. I want to be a pole vaulter like my brother. And I said, well, of course you can. And so we bought some poles and those pink poles, and
Yes.
we started girls pole vaulting in 2005.
Okay.
We were the last state. Well, anyway, our state association said we're not going to have girls pole vault. I go, well, we have boys pole vault. They go, well, but girls are not interested in that. And I said, I assure you they are.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, we're not going to add it. We're not going to do it. And so one of my girls and I got an attorney and we sued the state
Wow.
association.
Okay.
And it only went like 2 weeks. It
Yeah.
went through some preliminary hearings and stuff. And they said, you know what? We're going to do this because we
Yeah.
stand to lose. We're going to lose this deal. It's going
Right.
to look bad. So in 2005, we started our girls pole vaulting, and our girls did really well. But there was a little short seventh grade boy in 2005, Sam,
Yeah.
and he joined in with our girls. Now,
And just for
no,
everybody listening, just in case they don't know, when you say Sam, Sam Kendricks just got the silver medal at the
yeah,
Olympics. Uh, you know,
yeah.
uh, 6 meter
He,
guy. So yeah, just continue. Go ahead.
but Sam, like I said, he was short, slow, and weak. But I knew because I got taller, faster, and stronger as
Right.
I got older. I said he'll grow into it. And I loved. I didn't necessarily. I loved all track and field events, but I'd always had a special place in my heart for the pole vault because it's the longest track event outside of the marathon. And
Right.
you go to a track meet, and what's one of the coolest events?
Right.
The pole vault. And so,
Yeah.
hey, you got a little guy, you can teach him this skill. He was kind of cute out there. He was the smallest guy in every meet,
Right.
and he was kind of known, oh, that's that Oxford coach's kid. Because outside of him, I always picked the studs to pole vault because they were easy to coach.
Right.
And so I'd pick a wide receiver or a DB, and you could get these guys to 13 feet in a month. And so, and they could score some points for us. And so Sam, he progressed and he got better. And, next thing you know, I think he jumped 12.6 as a ninth grader. And
Wow.
then, like 13.6 as a sophomore. And then
Okay.
he jumped 15.4 as a junior.
Yeah.
And we made the undercard at nationals. I call it the undercard,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah. I
vertical.
know what you're talking about. Yep.
So, but the crazy kind of story about that is I took them to nationals, and I want to say it was 09, 08. I think it was 08. We had a kid qualify for nationals in the 400, and we were sitting there watching the elite division of the boys pole vault. And here he is; he's an eighth grade pole vaulter,
Hmm.
and watching. I mean, a sack full of kids jump 15.6 or higher. I think it was one, Spencer McCorkle won it like
Yeah.
16.7,
I remember that name. Yep.
like a 16.7. And we just sat there, and sometimes your kid has to see it in order to elevate their mind to that
Right.
next level of
Yes.
thinking. And so as a coach, the light really came on for me because I had seen just a handful of good high school pole vaults, really good ones.
Yeah.
And there I see this huge collection of them, and start really paying attention. And uh, we started elevating our game in every event by going to nationals, but
Right.
especially in the jumps, in the pole vault and high jump. And so Sam sitting there next to me as an eighth grader, he goes, "Dad, do you think I could ever jump in this event?" And I said, "I think if we work, I think if we get to work, you can jump. By the time you're a senior, I think you'll be in this."
Yeah.
And sure enough, I think he jumped 15.4 as a junior in there, and then
Mm.
he didn't do well as a senior. But there again, that was kind of I call many of my athletes' failures are on me because I always said, you've got all the skills in the world, but I don't have enough knowledge, and I need to gain more knowledge. And so,
Right.
we get to national Sam's senior year, and we have two poles. He's got one to open on, and one he had jumped 17 feet on.
Okay.
And so we get there, and this is Mondo Super X runway, and this big crowd, people from everywhere, and Sam's just crushing that big pole. He's just crushing it,
Ah.
and nothing's working.
Right.
I just think he jumped 15.9, you
Right.
know, but I could not scramble quick enough, mentally enough to make the right correction to
Right.
help him go further. And so that's just another mark. Coach K's got to learn a little bit more.
Right.
So then he goes over to Ole
If I just
Miss.
stop you for a second,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love a lot of the stuff that you're bringing up, and I just want to highlight some of it so that the listeners kind of get it. Is like, one, from your background in the military
Hmm.
to the testing on the track. I want people to understand you're obviously doing this in a very analytical, logical way when you're training
Right.
athletes, and even what you're doing with Sam, it's like very strategic. You saw, like, okay, Sam's going to be a little bit of a late bloomer physically. It might
Yeah.
be till junior, senior, until he kind of grows into his body.
Hmm.
Let's put him in an event that's more technical, and then
Hmm.
even your approach. on like the pole vault, you're like, okay, you got that growth mindset of like, okay, I've got to keep growing and learning to help my athletes.
Mhm.
And you always put it on yourself. If my athletes fail, I did something wrong. I've got to be better. And that's how I always feel as a coach. And I
Yeah.
think the thing is, and I'm sure you could share this from your perspective, I think because I'm that way, my athletes, whenever they have a bad meet, they're like, I'm sorry, coach, I should have done X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, I'm
Mhm.
sorry too. I think I should have made X, Y, and Z decisions,
Yeah.
and that creates a beautiful culture because now both parties are working as hard as they can.
Yeah, and it's funny because Sam is kind of famous for never having a no height. He's been in like 280 meets
Mhm.
and he's never no heighted. Well, that is partly because as he was raised as a coach's kid, even as a little guy, I would say, "Okay, Sam, get down there to the pole vault and score us a point." And
Mhm.
so he's going to clear a bar. And
Right.
and so even at the collegiate level, we always started looking at bars as a point value for the team. And so with that mindset, he's always going to clear a bar.
Right.
And so I always say that the opening bar is the coach's report card.
Yes.
And so the only athlete I ever had that no heighted was his baby brother, John. And we're at a meet. We were at a meet. He was pretty good. When you're pretty good, you have to wait until it's almost
Yes.
over before you come in, and
Right.
then you're cold and all that. Well, he comes in and he just crushed his first three poles. We couldn't get
Yeah.
over the opener.
Yeah.
And so he looks over at me and he thinks that I'm going to just blow up. Everybody's
Mhm.
looking at me.
Right.
And he comes over and I said, "So where you want to eat?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Is is that it?" And I go, "Well, we got to talk about this because this is at least 50% me.
Right.
I'm supposed to be the guy who really knows, and between you and me, we couldn't get it done. So let's
Right.
go get something to eat, and we'll talk about this later and figure out why it happened, and let's make a
Right.
plan." So I always call that first bar the coach's report card. That week before the event, did the coach and the athlete do their homework? So you're going to make that bar.
Right.
Um, and so anyway, back to kind of Sam's deal and my deal. I got Sam to 17 in high school, and then he goes over in college. And I was kind of coaching from the background his freshman year. He's just across town,
Right.
and he jumped 550 his freshman year, and he got to go to NCAAs, and I think he was 10th at NCAAs that year. But then, sort of a real turning point for us was that summer because it was the 2012 trials. And
Okay.
Sam was in the trials for a very long time. He was on the list.
Okay.
And that was back when they could have meets with like two people and they could have multiple meets a day. And it was all
Right.
kind of sketchy.
Yes.
And so he was in. I mean, Ole Miss had paid for his tickets and his accommodations and everything in Oregon. Me and his mother had paid for everything. We're on the plane, fly into Oregon. And when we landed, we looked at the list and there had several more entries had been entered. And
Wow.
Jeff Coover, Derek Kinch, and Sam Kendricks had been struck off the list.
Wow.
And so we're there. We're actually there. And
Yeah.
he's not in it.
Yeah.
So he sat in the stands with us and we watched it. And so after that, he says, "Dad, I will never be on the bubble again. I'll never be on the bubble." And so the work we did that fall really enabled him to start stacking up, 550 jumps. And then he had a 580 jump that year as a sophomore.
Wow.
And so it's funny how your goals change because, when he started, it was just a score point for the school and being a fun event. And then it's like, okay, I want to be state champion. And so he did that a couple
Right.
times. And then it's like, I want to jump 17 feet. What sacrifices do we have to make to
Yes.
jump 17? And he did. He made those sacrifices and he did it. And then, so the next goal is to get a medal at conference in college. And then the next goal is get into NCAAs and make it to
Yep.
Oregon, so each one of those. And so the work we did when we got there, things actually worked because we did, we put in the work. And
Right.
so, he goes to NCAAs as a sophomore, and he wins it. I didn't expect him to win it, but he
Yeah.
did. And then he won it again his junior year. And so
Mhm.
now we're at a real turning point. And I said, Sam, I know you don't want to hear this, but you need to come out early. It's 2 years to Rio. You need to come out early. And he's like, what? Wait a minute. I'm going to be senior. I'm the big man on campus.
Right,
I'm a
right, right.
known person and all that. And I said, well, we got to get on a plane and stay there. And we got to fly to Europe, and we got to fly all over. And you got so much more to learn if you think you're going to make the team for Rio.
Right.
And it took me about a month to talk him into that.
Wow.
And
Okay.
but Nike was willing to sign him, and a year early. And so we kind of shifted our training over back to the high school. And then after a little bit, Ole Miss, they were a little mad at first, but then they invited us back over, because they took the high road and said, "Hey, we want you to train here," and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
all that worked out. But it just, a series of small little dreams. And then when he makes the team for Rio, I mean, he was pretty good. But when we got to Rio, um, we're standing out there behind the stadium before the final, and I had never seen men so nervous in my life. You just name them.
Yeah.
Everybody was so nervous. I think the only guy that wasn't Renault was not nervous, but everybody was so nervous. And I said, Sam, there's 12 guys here, and 9 of them have set their mind to be disappointed if they
Yes.
don't get a medal. I said, I don't want you to have that mindset because, son, this is our victory, man. We're from Oxford, Mississippi. You're getting to jump in the Olympic final tonight in front of the whole world. No matter what, you're going to get the full warm up. You're going to get 3 shots at the opener. Probably going to do pretty good, but we've already won, man. And so
Right.
when he went out there, he kind of had the attitude that, you know, it's over. I've already won. So let's pole
Right.
vault.
Yes.
And it turned out really well. But the funny thing is, I gave him a big hug before he walks out on the field, and I'm like the only dad coach on the practice track.
Right.
And one by one, these guys come up and they go, Coach K, because they all know me. They go, Coach K, I need a hug too. Coach K, I need a hug. The only one that didn't come over to get a hug was Renault,
Ah.
because he just ain't that kind of. He's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But we're really good friends.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
again, to stop you, I think a bunch of interesting stuff. So last week, one of the guys that coaches for me and has been with me for a while, we were talking about, you know, passion or love, right? Those are
mhm,
words that are often confused. I think
mhm,
today, you hear a lot of people talk about passion, like, well, if you're passionate about something, you always have fun. And
mhm.
like you said, it's like, well, you guys have a passion for the vault. Sam had a passion for a vault, but you had to sit him down and say, hey, we're going to have to make some sacrifices.
Oh yeah.
These are big choices. And when you're really passionate about things, I think people forget that part of that equation is like, look, anything that can bring you very high joy can also give you lows. And you
I
have to
know,
be
just
able to
like
go through that
Tokyo,
suffering to
Tokyo
get there.
kind of crushed Sam's spirit. You get this Olympic thing, you're going to the Olympics, so that was the whole thing about Tokyo. He got, felt like he just got crushed by what was happening.
Yes.
But anyway, back to what you were just
Yeah.
saying. Sam and I, as a family, and especially with my boys, we watch movies together all the time.
Hmm.
And one of the little catchphrases that we came up with a long time ago is from a baseball movie, and the phrase is "for the love of the game."
Yes.
So no matter what we were doing, Sam and I'd say, we're doing this for the love of the game. I love to do this. And he'd go to Europe and he would jump every bar in a competition. And like an athlete would ask him, specifically Renault, when
Right.
Renault was unbeatable, he'd say,
Right.
Sam, why did you jump the 530 and the 540? And Sam says, well, I loved it. I love the pole vault. And for at least 2 bars, Renault, I'm going to be ahead of you you know and
Right.
so and we just kind of took the attitude, we're doing this because we love it and it's fun, and the crowd shows up. It's pretty purely entertainment for them. they
Right.
don't they don't pay 50 euros to watch you sit on your behind. They want to see you go over that bar. And I said, so
Yeah.
Sam, jump a bar, wave to the crowd, big smile. I mean, it's really easy to smile at the early heights, so don't
Yes.
skip them. don't skip them. You know,
Right.
so clear the early height, wave at the jumbotron or whatever. Enjoy yourself.
Well, and you bring up a couple of things now, I think when we look at, strategy in the vault and like what bars to jump at, people don't realize sometimes you need lower bars to tweak things.
Oh
You're
yeah.
not, yeah, again, obviously, if all things are optimal and you're peaked and you're ready to go, maybe you have to be a little bit strategic and save your energy to really max out.
Hmm.
But most of the year, I don't think people are in that realm. I think having a
Hmm.
few more bars is advantageous. Like I even think one year Indoor USA's was at Staten Island. So I went to go
Hmm.
watch Indoor
Yeah.
USA's.
Yeah.
And what I thought was fascinating was it's 17:10 qualified you.
Right.
They made 17:08 opening bar. And Scott, I'm watching this warm up, and you could tell all these guys are like, I got to be on my big pole because we're opening at 17:08. And they're
Hmm.
overreaching, trying to get on these big poles. And, some guys are getting stood up. They're not even able to swing. I
Right.
think over half the field no heighted.
Mm.
Whereas Andrew Irwin ended up winning that year, but he
Hmm.
came in at his normal opening. And so
Right.
even like his first couple jumps weren't amazing, but it was his normal opening bar. And so he was able to
Sure.
progress through his poles and grips and he ended up jumping a good bar for him and he ended up winning. But it's
Yeah.
amazing to me where sometimes people I think almost try to be a little bit too smart and like, we're gonna
Yeah.
open a little higher and let's plan to skip this. And then they never get to the poles and grips that they need.
Very few people get that good. And that's the attitude we've always had. You know, very few people get that good that where they can warm up, then sit on the rear for 30 minutes and then come in and be amazing. We
Yeah.
always felt like, well, and plus I took Sam to Earl Bell when he was an
Okay.
at time of about 9'6". And so at their camp, they jump all day Saturday and you just jump so much. Well, then Sunday morning they have a meet. And obviously everybody's trying to get a PB, you know.
Right.
And so Sam said they were about to get ready to start, and Sam said, "Hey Earl, can I get a bungee?" And Earl go, "Nah, no bungee." And he goes, "No bungee for the warm up?" And Earl said, "Pick a low bar, Sam. Pick a low bar." He says, "Low bar is a way better warm up than some bungee if you can pole vault." And
Mhm.
so, he said, "What do you want to start at, Sam? I don't care. We'll put the bar where you say, you know." And so we took that, and Sam would have to take fewer warm up jumps
Okay.
if we knew we were going to open at that low bar. And that's sort of a cheat code for us because I'm really honing in on where I want those standards.
Yes.
And so, like, for example, in Paris, it was really easy for Sam to jump the first three bars in the final on that pole. It was really easy. We did not know whether or not we were going to be able to get on his biggest pole. We'd never
Okay.
jumped on it. And so in Paris at the 585 bar, that is a bar we knew we could afford to pass anyway.
Okay.
And so I said, Sam, let's pull out that untried pole and let's try it one time. Well, it just stood him up and he didn't penetrate into the pit.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, well, that didn't work. But, you know, we had six poles. Pole five's a pretty good pole. So we'll go back to pole five. And so every bar he made, he jumped on the same stick.
Right, right.
Um, and we'd done that a lot. I mean, in London in 2017, he jumped on one pole, and Doha in 2019, he jumped on one. He's done that a lot. But by jumping those earlier low bars, we were able to really calibrate. Okay, when we're really going to have to hit this pole hard, where do we need the standards? And so I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, if you don't have to redline in these big events, if you don't have to red line on the first three bars, you know, you got something left when the bar gets really high.
Right.
And so having Sam being able to, okay, this is a good pole. I can lob it over on 50. I can lob it over on 70. I can just concentrate a little bit and get over on 80. Now, when it gets to 90 and 95, I can really try to focus on my best technical jump and it'll work.
Right.
So the early bars for us have always been a kind of a cheat code. We're not going to pass them because we're going to get some data from that.
Well, yeah, and I always think I compare it to like a lifting workout.
Hmm.
You know, let's say you're squatting and let's say your max squat is, I don't know, 400 pounds. Well, you don't start at 400 that day.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you have some warm up lifts and sets. And then
that's
I
right.
even say, like, the longer you lift, that line between warm up and actual workout is
Hmm.
kind of a gray area. And I think the same thing for a pole vaulter. That opening bar to max, like really having to, like you said, put the effort in to clear the bar. That kind of, there's a gray there. There's the warm up bars, and you're slowly transitioning into that max effort for the day.
Right. Well, what we would do is, for example, in the warm up, if Sam is, we feel like his, I mean, I've got log books for years, every competition, every jump, every make, and
Mhm.
I've got the data on that. And so, we know to jump high, there's two poles. He's got to be on one or the other.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so in the warm up, we'd start with one, go to two, go to three, go to four. And so we know we can open up on five. But like you said, we had those warm up reps to get
yes,
ready. But I don't think any pole vaulter, I mean, back before there were more poles and more pole selection, it had to be tougher,
yes,
um, because, it's kind of like, uh, Sam had two poles mostly in college. He had one to come in on and one to kind of jump high on.
right,
And so, it's knowing what level of effort to put out there.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, just anything else that pops up into your head. I know I tend to
No,
to
no, I
I
think
tell stories as a coach. Sam would say, "Dad's a storyteller." Um,
I Well, I think that's part of being a coach is being a storyteller. I think there's a lot of like we would joke over the years. Like some athletes were like, "Hey, Bronco, how much is like the friendship package? I just want to be able to come in and talk to you every once in a while." Um, but yeah, I think that's important. And I guess to kind of build off of what you're saying, for me, I've always said to people that that is the benefit of a lot of these pole vault clubs, because now instead of, like, I always give the analogy, if you went into, let's say, a gym and all they had was 45-pound plates,
yeah,
not not everybody can make 90-pound jumps. You're going to hit a wall and you're not going to be able to progress. And
yeah,
so when you go to these pole vaulting clubs, like here we have like about 200 poles. So you can go up 5 pounds at a time, 6 inches in length, and you can
sure,
slowly transition. And I think
yeah,
that is a huge advantage, because now you don't have to get caught between two poles like you're describing,
mm,
and you have these smooth transitions. I think that that's a huge advantage, and I think learning to do that, progress through the poles and grips, and
mhm,
going back to what you're saying, I mean, you pulled up that book. You guys have the data. You need
mm,
to have data, and for me, I think there's a lot of people that tend to just kind of fall on like coaching the vault as like, all right, let's run as fast as we can, try to get on the biggest pole possible, and let's see how high you jump. And to me, that's
right,
just not enough data. Like there's so much more involved in the vault. Like for me,
right,
it's like I'm always catching a mid mark. We
mhm,
see if the takeoff is appropriate. Are you under? Are you out
sure,
in
sure,
relation to the mid mark? Because if
right.
you're not catching that mid, I mean, yeah, they might be under, but if you keep moving them back, now they're going to be too far out and still stretching at the end.
Well, it's not
That's
going to work.
right.
And like you cite, there's so many ways, there's so many things to learn. And like, I don't know if you saw this, but I was training with Johnny last weekend,
Okay.
and he pulled a pool shark sort of a bet on me in
Okay.
practice. We're on a little bitty pole, and I was convinced that he couldn't jump, more than like 490 on this little pole
Okay.
from this little run. Well, we got one jump left, and he wants to bet lunch on like 5 meters.
Okay.
And I look around and I'm like, ain't no way he's going to jump 5 meters
Right.
on this little pole. I've been watching this training session, and it's just
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Right.
What does he do? Because I've taught him, tried to teach him a lot. He goes back there and he goes, you know what? I'm gonna move my mark in 6 inches. I'm gonna step under on this jump, and I'm gonna clear this 5 meters. And I can do that because, and he does it. He totally sandbags me. He's way under, and he
Right.
clears it. And he clears it. And I had totally forgotten. I mean, he's doing everything the way I want him to. And then at the end, when we bet, he uses like my own knowledge against me
Yeah.
to beat me on the bet. Here I am. I'm thinking he's just going to do what he's been doing, and he's not going to make it. Nope, nope. He set me up, man.
Yeah.
Uh, he says I'm going to be 6 inches under. This pole is going to be a whole lot bigger, and I'm going to clear this thing.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
and I think what you're bringing up a couple of things, Brent, from the beginning of this episode. You keep talking about competition. That competitive mindset. So it's only you and him out there, but you're still competing against each other, which is amazing, right? And then the other thing is, as a vaulter, you're constantly trying to manipulate the pole speed and your swing speed.
right.
You got to get this pole moving forward, but you got to get your body to go up. And
That's
now
right.
you can do different things to manipulate that.
Right.
And, hey, if let's say you're on a certain pole that there's no way I'm not getting into the pit. Like, this is easy to move this pole. I can
Right.
now do things to kind of slow down that pole speed to try to get to the top of the jump faster. So there's always that play too.
So when I train Sam very often, he has like six poles in a series where he competes on, but generally speaking, we train on one, the first one. And so he can jump a lot of stuff around 18, maybe 18.4 on that pole, probably not very much higher. So I try to use those numbers to help him make adjustments and be the best jumper he can be. In other words, get his best jump out of that pole, and see what limit we can reach on that pole. And he'll say, "Hey, I'll make this on pole 2," and I go, "Yeah, but I'm not giving you pole 2."
Right.
And so what that does, it makes him extremely technical in his
Yes.
model. And so, there's a ton of technical models, and I think kids come to us, and I assess kind of what their model is. And then I'm like, I want to help you get better at this model. I don't want to change your model, but there's a few things that you can learn. And we've had elite people come through here, and I'd be working with them, and like, you don't know how to make an adjustment like this. You don't know how to. Let's learn this. Let's learn
Right.
this. And it's fun to see even an elite jumper. You're on these little poles and these little runs, and they want to go to another pole. And I go, no, 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 no. Let's not go to another pole. I want to see you make an adjustment on this pole
Yes.
and make that. And I love that. And of course, they learn from that. And Sam's whole deal, we talked about, I think when he jumped 6 meters the other day, I think it was like 1.32 meters above his grip.
Right.
And so that's sort of the model that we came up with years ago for Sam, because he wasn't fast and he wasn't tall and so forth. Let me go back a second, because when I was in my learning, trying to learn all these field events, I don't know if you have a copy of I know it's backwards, the East German textbook.
It's the right way to on my
Okay,
screen.
on yours is the right way. Well, anyway, if you go back here, and let me see if I can find the right page. Yeah, there it is. Page 295. It has the data on the straight pole, the guys that were best at straight pole, and the guys in the early flexible pole. It has it on there, and what their push off was above their grip.
Yes.
And so when Sam was a freshman at Ole Miss, and I was looking at this book, and I said, okay, John Pennell, he was a straight pole guy in high school, and he jumped 13.6. Well, he got to college, and he got better, 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 really good. And he jumped 540, and he gripped 14.11.
Yeah.
I mean, he gripped 14.11. You drop 8 inches into the box.
Right.
So he's a meter. I mean, this is John Pennell in the late 60s, and he jumped a meter above his grip, gripping 14.11. And I said, Sam, you can grip 14.11.
Right.
You can get 14.11. Let's try this model and let's run with this. And so between
just to add to what you're saying, this is where, again, and I know, I was very thankful also for your comment on that post that I made, kind of comparing and just saying, hey, like what's
Sure.
going on here with Mondo and Sam when you compare speeds and the push off, right? Because you're talking
Mhm.
about push off. And there's guys today, top level guys that struggle to get a 3 foot push off. And like you said, Pinell is doing this way back when.
Yeah, a
It's
meter in like
amazing where I
1970.
feel like it's sometimes people talk about push off today as if like if you have a good push off, oh well, you must have the gene for push off, like it's genetics. And it's like, no, it's technique. Yeah.
It is technique. And I sat down with Bob Segrin at Reno one time, and we talked about this, the early guys and what they were holding and
Hmm.
what they were jumping. And so when we started kind of going with this model and said, let's just see how efficient we can be. Instead of chasing a bunch of poles and stuff, let's just see how good a pole vaulter we can be. And so I think his sophomore year, he jumped a 50, then a 52, and then a 54, and then a 55, and he was gripping like 15.2, 15.3.
Right. Yeah.
And so we are on to something here. We are on
Yes.
to something because he wasn't Andrew Irwin. I mean,
Right.
Andrew beat the brakes off of us in high school. I mean, so, it's just, we can't be that guy. So let's just be the most efficient Sam that he can be. And so that kind of became our model. And it really kind of blew up when we went to Texas Relays his sophomore year, and he jumped 19.1 holding 15.9. And
Yeah.
so, that's about 4 feet. And
Right.
people couldn't believe it. And I go, oh, I can believe it. I could honestly see this coming. He just
Right.
needed enough conditions so that he had the confidence to try that. Because he
Yes.
had never gripped 15.9 before. We had to be at Austin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody jumps high at Austin. We had to be at Austin to grip up about 4 inches and go to this pole we're so afraid of.
Right.
Um, but it's that sort of Sam's uh, mentally in a competition. Sam wants to compete against. He wants to bet on himself, not bet on a bigger pole. And
Right.
he says, I'm a better pole vaulter than this pole is a pole vault pole.
Right.
So, I'm just, instead of saying, you know what, I think I want to be with that pole, he goes, no, this is a pretty darn good pole, and I'm going to be the best jumper I can be. And so, kind of one of the funniest coaching stories at the elite level, we were in London at 2017 for the World Championships. And you know how in the pole vault section over there, you have all the coaches and the athletes come over. But behind the coaches, you've got some names back there, man. You've got former Olympic champions,
Yeah.
former world record holders, big time coaches. And it's kind of like those old E.F. Hutton commercials, when the coach and the athlete are talking, everybody's kind of leaning
Yeah.
in,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
wanting to know what is he going to tell him? Is he going to tell him to change poles? Is he going to tell him this, this, and this?
Right.
And so he comes over and he says, what do you think? And I just said, I think you can jump better. And he turns around, he shakes his head, and he goes back. And the next attempt looks better. It's the same pole.
Yeah.
And so he comes back again, and he says, what do you think? And I said, I think you can connect a little bit better. Just
Hmm.
think about that. But see, he doesn't have to think about the run. He doesn't have to think about the pole. He's just thinking about that one cue.
Right.
And he doesn't have to think about standards. We haven't changed anything. And
Right.
so it's almost like pitch and catch. And
Yeah.
so I remember some pretty famous pole vaulter behind me. He says, is he going to change poles? And I go, nope, not going to change. I said, besides the fact that's the biggest one we've ever had, we
Yeah.
don't have one bigger. But I said, that's just the pole. He had jumped 6 meters on that pole. And all of a sudden you get to the world championships and it's not that big anymore. I
Right.
go, gosh, we can jump every height on this. And
Right.
so he came over and I said, I think if you focus on the top, explode through the top better, I think you'll clear this 95 or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And it was just simple cues, kind of like you do in high school. And I believe in making it really, really, really simple if I can.
Yeah.
Um, and to that post about Sam and Mondo, it's so interesting that both of them are super efficient. So what is the difference? Mondo's faster. He's
Right,
faster. They're both darn good pole vaulters, but Mondo's speed allows him to hold a foot higher than Sam. And
right.
so I know Sam is pushing, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, and
Yeah,
Mondo's doing the same thing. But Mondo has this gift of speed and technical ability. And if Sam could do that, he would. Right?
right.
And that's another kind of funny joke, people say they look at an elite competition. Well, so and so would just do this, and so would just do that. And I said, hold on there, Charles. You realize every man out there is doing all he can with all he's got. And every question that you're coming up with, they've already worked through that 100 times. This is the best they got, and that's what they're doing out there.
Yeah, well,
So,
I I think even at the club level, whether it's high school or college athletes, and I always I always think it's like it's so easy. Like everybody watching is always like, well, why don't they just go on a bigger pole? And it's like this is the biggest they can handle right now. And like you're
because they don't
describing,
want to land on the runway.
well, yeah, that too. And listen, I definitely do see stuff at the high school college level where you do see people overreaching
Oh
because
yeah,
we all get a little greedy, right? It's like I go to the restaurant. If I order with my eyes, I want to order 3 appetizers and 2 entrees, but I can't
right,
finish it all.
right.
And the thing is, the longer I coach, like you said, it's like as my athletes are developing, obviously they get on bigger poles, obviously they grip up. But when we're getting to competitions, like you're describing, we don't make as many changes. Sure, I may bring some like warm up poles just because like we might do some drill from a 3 or a 4, and then
Sure,
when they get back to
sure.
their full. But
And
it's
those
like
are great ideas. Yeah.
right. But once we're in the competition, it's like if we go up 1 or 2 poles with one of my kids that's been jumping 2, 3 years, that's
Hmm.
a big deal. We're not
Yeah.
going to be going through 5 poles in a competition unless it's a kid that's about to bust out and they've been training and this was their first meet after like 6 months, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, and I see even at a high level competition, you can see, and we know all these guys, we know the girls, and you can see when they picked up that big stick
Yes.
because, and I'm like, oh, don't do that. Don't pick that one up. Stay with what you got. Stay with what you got. And then they get stood up and
Hmm.
they said, oh, it'll work next time. And they land on top of the bar. Oh, it'll work next time. And in their mind, they feel like in order to get 2 more bars, I've got to
Right.
be on this pole. And I totally get that. But sometimes I'm like, I'm sitting back there, oh, you're doing so good. Don't change anything. Don't change anything.
Right.
But some athletes that we compete against, they'll change a pole for every height. They just
Yes.
have it in their mind. I need this pole. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe your pole, maybe something's a little out of whack. And I also, when you go overseas, you never get a true tailwind. You never do. Like in college here,
Yeah.
man, they got 4 runways at most colleges. They're going to set you up for success.
Right.
Once you go and put on that Nike uniform or that Puma uniform and you go to that meet, man, they don't care what direction the wind's blowing.
Right.
And so one thing about Sam's model is it allows him to jump well in all conditions. And
Right.
so if the conditions are terrible, I know there's 2 cats that are going to be good, Sam and Mondo.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other guys, honestly, they're reaching, I say this, that they're all good. But if you're on a 520 pole and the wind's in your face, you ain't doing it. And
Right.
and so Sam being on a little bit lesser equipment, his model allows him to jump in a whole lot of conditions. And I think 2017, he won 17 out of 17 meets. And we're over in Europe, and I'm like, Sam, this is getting it's getting kind of boring. Nobody wants to go and see one guy win every time. And he goes, Dad, I'm winning some of these meets 570 into a headwind. He
Yeah.
said, it's not my fault I won. And I go, well, yeah, it is. I mean, but you're doing good and you're doing it right and everything. He goes, there were a lot of days that I didn't have it, but the wind helped me. He said, I wouldn't have won all 17, but he said there were 4 or 5 of those. It was a headwind,
Yeah.
and I was able to jump a 75 or an 80 and win it.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, being good technically and not being overloaded on grip height and stuff like that can help you. And that's just one of the things that kids come through here and we say, you're doing great. We want to teach you a few other things. What are you going to do if you get there as a headwind? What are you going to do?
Well,
And they haven't even thought about it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to be, I always tell people, I'm like, you may not always jump your PR,
Right.
but you could always jump your best,
That's right. That's right.
for the day. Right. So
That's
you've
right.
got to be able to make those adjustments. And like what you're describing with practices, whether it's with Sam, your other son, or just people who are visiting, I think there's something to be said of like practice can't always be about just can we get on a higher grip? Can we get on a bigger pole? I think
Right.
sometimes practice has to be like, no, this is going to be our grip and pole today.
Yeah.
Let's try to be more technical. Let's try to
Right.
execute whatever we're trying to execute with our model, not
Yeah.
just try to grip up. Because I think the other thing is when you're constantly trying to do that, you inevitably end up like failing. Like you'll get stood up, you won't be able to swing. And now you have this negative feedback loop about going on a bigger pole, going up a grip. Because I always say here at Apex with the athletes, they're always landing in the pit. They're always being
Right.
technical. And so when we go to the meets, our athletes aren't scared to go up a pole because their feedback loop is when we go up a pole, the only thing that changes is we jump higher. We
Yeah.
still land in the pit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where I unfortunately heard, and I like what you're describing, even at the elite level, you see athletes who are fearful sometimes jumping because they're like, well, last time I tried this pole, it didn't go well. Whereas like
Yeah.
what you're describing, Sam can go into the meet and he's like, listen, headwind, tailwind, I know I'm getting in on this pole. I can focus on connecting to the jump better.
We were at a Diamond League meet, and this was many years ago. But one of Sam's buddies, and I won't mention his name, but I see Sam standing about 4 meters from the box with
Mhm.
his back to me. And I'm like, oh my God, it looks like he's going to give that dude a tap. And sure enough, the guy comes down the runway and Sam gives him a tap into the pit. And he comes over and I go, what was that? He goes, he's so afraid of his poles. He said, Sam, would you please give me a tap on this first attempt?
Wow.
And this
Wow.
is an Olympic level guy,
Right.
you know, and so, it's kind of funny that never goes away. And so I always say, like Sean Francis, pole vault's 80% mental and the rest is in your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, the mental side, I just feel like you have to, whatever the conditions, if it's a crosswind or whatever, you have to, okay, let's figure out a way today for us to train and learn and tackle this monster
Yes.
and see if we can get a little bit better at this. And to your point, some days you feel like Superman and that kid's got to try that bigger pole. But
Mhm.
that's going to be the day you have that soft little tailwind, the sun is shining, the birds are singing. Okay, today's the day. Um, but if it's not working, immediately you come back to something that does work and
Yes.
you end on 3 or 4 real successes because of this part right here,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah,
And
no, that's huge. And I think one of the things that I think about, and I know this happens with other sports and even with strength and conditioning, but I think you see a better job in some of these other, events. Uh, as coaches, I kind of feel like we have to be kind of like the guardians of like technique and
mhm,
doing it the right way. Because the
right.
athlete is always going to want, hey, let me try that bigger pull. Hey, let's max out. Let's do a long run today. Hey, let's just do,
Mhm,
all out sprints or let's max out the bench today. As coaches, we're the ones that have to put the brakes on
right.
and be like, no, 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 let's work on something. Let's do this smoothly. We have to progress to that. And
We
I think
want to work
sometimes,
over the
unfortunately, the
long term.
pole
You have to work from a plan. You
yeah,
know,
right,
you
and I
can't
think,
just,
unfortunately, there's a lot of pole vault coaches too. Because and listen, I've been there when I was younger. It's like, my mentality sometimes when I was a young coach, I was like, "If this kid doesn't get on this pole, we can't win, so we gotta try to get on this pole." Instead of being like, "Hey, we have to have a good jump, and whatever pole we end up on, that's okay, but we gotta have that good jump first."
right. And
And
success, it's funny because success looks so different uh, depending on which set of eyes you're looking at it. Like when we went to the trials for the first time, Sam didn't even get to jump. And then we go to the trials for the second time and he won. Um, and obviously there were some people that were really upset and they didn't make the team because they had set their goal is I got to make the Olympic team or I stink. Or they
yeah,
set something. That's the
yeah,
thing. And I always took the the view is everybody here is amazing.
Right.
Everybody here is amazing. And, just kind of like making the Olympic team, just being able to be there and take some jumps in front of the whole world, that's the victory for us, not the medal. That was pretty awesome. But
Right.
that was a real that we didn't think about that until the end. Your job is to make a bar. And
Hmm.
then after that, regroup and make another bar. And if
Right.
you look at it like that and you try to have some fun, you're going to get better. And I had to tell Sam this. It's funny because, he's been big places and stuff, and uh, and I've been with him, but we would be coaching a kid, and the kid wouldn't be jumping very high or something like
Mhm.
that. I remember taking him aside and I said, "Hey, hey, hey, remember, you got to recalibrate here." I said, "This kid jumping 3 meters is a big victory for him.
Yes.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal,
Yeah.
man. Don't you forget that's a big deal." And
Yes.
so then all of a sudden that switched it in his brain. He goes, "So how high has this kid jumped? Oh man, this is great. I mean, this is really
Right.
good," and so forth. And also, that's one of the things that we want to do here, and you try to do at your club. You want to promote the sport. You want to promote um, the health of the sport.
Mhm.
Sam went to Paris, and he was pretty snake bit about the Olympics. After
Yeah.
Tokyo, and I told him beforehand, I said, "Sam, uh, one thing I don't like about the Olympics is it gets hyped so much. It gets
Mhm.
just hyped so much." And I think there's way better track meets than the Olympics. That's just me.
Mhm.
I haven't been to a lot of them, but there's a lot of them that are shorter. And
Yeah.
anyway, but anyway, I said, remember the Olympics is about friendship through sport, friendship through sport. I said, so remember that every man out there is your friend. And I said, you can tell who's really a friend by who celebrates the success of a friend.
Yes.
And so when you see your friend jump big and and you genuinely, that's amazing. That's what I love about this sport.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you can't be that guy sitting over there going like, "Oh no, he made it." You have to, and even down to the first lesson, the second lesson, you have to be able to celebrate. You can't lose that spirit of
Mhm.
the love of the game. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And something I've always told people that coach for me, because when we get to outdoor track, we'll have the first weekend of states. It's like we have sectionals, groups, and then the state championship. At
Yeah,
sectionals, we might have athletes in 6 locations. So I have to send out a bunch of coaches, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I always tell people, I go, I get it. You might be in college now, or maybe out of college, and sectional is not a big deal to you. But remember when that was the most important meet of your life.
yeah,
That's what it is
yeah,
for these kids today.
yeah,
And I always try to press upon that with anybody who coaches for me. It's like, yeah, I get it. Maybe this height is not a big deal for you, but for this kid, it is. Because I think in the reverse, I always tell people what I think is funny in the pole vault is, certain people will say, well, you know what? If you only like, if my PR is 17, anybody who jumps lower sucks. I go, and you know what's funny? The guy who jumps 18, he thinks 17 sucks. I go, so you know what? We all suck. And so let's just keep working hard and try to get better. And I think
right,
that's the mentality, almost like, look, in a way, hey, we're all bad sometimes, we're all good sometimes, we're all trying to get
yeah,
better and just
that's right,
keep moving along, keep helping each other. And like you said, especially at the club setting, it's like, hey, we want to cheer each other on. Sure, somebody else might be at a different point. They must be, maybe they're starting out, maybe they're just getting back into it after a few decades off,
uh-huh,
but let's cheer
sure,
each other on, help each other grow. And like you said, for me, I think pole vault is one of the best total body workouts. And
yeah,
it keeps you honest, right? Because if I power lift, I can get really unhealthy and heavy and deadlift a lot. But
yeah,
pole vault, it's total body, power to weight ratio is super important. And I guess just before I let you go, I think going back to the push off stuff, I was always impressed. I would see some of the workout stuff that you guys would post when you guys would go to Ole Miss, where, and you correct me if I'm wrong, this maybe I'm not remembering properly, but I remember seeing Sam do stuff even where it was almost like box jumps, but off a handstand.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's where it's like, even in the pole vault, like you said, depending on your technique, depending on your model, you have to start to almost be like, okay, well, what training can help push this higher?
I think Sam's close friendship with Jeff Hartwig.
Mhm.
And of course, I quit traveling with Sam in '09 after Doha, and Jeff
Okay.
travels with him all the time.
Mhm.
And who better to coach you on the road than Jeff Hartwig? And so Jeff and I get together and we make a plan before competitions between the
Mhm.
two of us. But it's the two of them out there at the track now. But anyway, Jeff's influence on Sam, and of course, Earl was a big influence on Jeff. And Jeff says, Sam, you got to be fast enough to pole vault or pole vault high. You got to be strong enough to pole vault. You got to be gymnastic enough to pole
Yeah.
vault. And so you want all of these things, but you need them in proportion to your event. We used to go to these NCAA meets, and my wife would go, and she's the mom, and she'd sit
Mhm.
there and she'd watch these guys come in, in the pole vault in the
Yeah.
warm up. She goes, "Oh my God, do we have to compete against these men?"
Right.
And
Right.
I said, "Your skinny boy is going to win." And she goes, "How could he possibly win? These guys look like they can lift the gym." I go,
Mhm.
"But they're not lifting the gym, baby. They're pole vaulting."
Right.
I said that sometimes a pole vaulter can fall in love with that mirror at the gym
Yes.
and forget why he's there. And so when you can lift, you can lift X amount. Okay, it's time to go pole vault.
Right.
Because we stay in here and we do this, and we're wasting time that we could be doing something else better.
Right.
Or this may actually even hurt us.
Right.
You may get hurt lifting really heavy. You
Right.
may get really spending too much time on that. You may get a weightlifting injury. Whereas, you need to keep all of these things in balance.
Yes.
I always favor the pole vaulting part of it, because you look at a gymnast. Do you ever see a gymnast in the weight room? They're huge, but they're huge in relation to what they do, and they
Right.
get big by doing pull-ups on the
Yes.
high
Yeah. Yeah.
bar and stuff
Right.
like that, walking on their hands and all that. And
Right.
so I think if I err, the error is going to be on the side of jumping and try to get better technically.
Mhm.
And or we do a lot of running. Sam had to get faster. I mean, when he
Right.
won USA's the first time, I think Sam ran 8.9 meters per second, but he
Wow.
still jumped 18, 10 and a half, and he won.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and so, that just said, okay, we're on the right track technically, but we've got to get faster if we have any plans to make the Olympic team and make the final.
Right.
Sam's first world championship was in Beijing in 2015. And I think he was eighth or ninth or something like that in the
Mhm.
final. And we had eaten dinner at the hotel, and I was sitting there kind of flipping through my iPad, and somebody sits down next to me and slaps me on the thigh, and I look over and it's Petrov. And I didn't know Petrov from a possum, but he's a really sweet guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he asked me, he says, "So, why does Sam jump at world championship on 480 pole?" He was on 480s.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, "Coach, he's really slow."
Yeah.
And he laughed and he says, "Must get faster for Rio." And he says, "Increase grip, centimeter, centimeter, centimeter," like
Yeah.
that. And so we kind of took that, and I wrote that down in my book. And so I think he increased his speed by probably, zero point 0.4. So we went from 8.9 to like 9.3.
Mhm.
And then he increased his grip from like, 15.5 to 15.10, by
Yeah.
the time we got to Rio. But it was all within these not huge parameters. We
Yeah. Just
measured success in it like this. And
right.
so like when I posted, Sam and I were sitting there messing around. I said, "Sam, what correction did you make to make the two high bars in Paris?" And he goes, "Oh, I just came down on my grip." And
Right.
that was the truth. He came down one finger for the 90, and he
Mhm.
came down two fingers for the 95, because he just needed a little more, just a
Mhm.
little more pole. And we brought the standards in just a little bit, but that was the skill
Right.
that if you spend the time and cultivate a really good technical jump, then the variables get small, and if the
Yeah.
variables can get small, that's when you can succeed more times. So
Well, and I think one of the things that I always try to let people know, it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard like the term like beginner gains, right? But
oh
everybody in the
right,
pole vault,
yeah.
yeah, everybody in the pole vault talks about those beginning stages, like, oh my gosh, Sally joined this year and she went from 8 to 12, and it's like, right, you took someone
You PB
untrained,
every meet.
trained, right? But it's like at a certain point, like you said, it's going to be that really slow incremental progression, progressive overload, right? And I have a saying that I always tell all the athletes, it's like the slower you go, the faster you will get there. The
And
more
that's
you
true.
try to push the limits too fast, boom, it's going to come crashing down.
Every time we tried to make an aggressive adjustment, Sam lost efficiency. And I said, well, we gained 3 inches in grip, but we've lost 4 inches in height.
Right.
And so that's why, Sam did go to a 495 pole to break the American record. He think he was gripping 16-1 when he broke the AR,
Okay.
but he almost broke it again. He almost broke it the other day in Silesia on a 490.
Right.
Because we just came to the conclusion, Sam at age 31, I said, Sam, you are the greatest 16-foot pole vaulter in
Yeah.
history. So be that. And
Right.
so, we know his range is, we hope it's meet to meet, it's between, 580 and 6 meters. That's where we want to, that's his range. And, there comes a point where you have to be just the best that you can be.
Yeah.
And, hope, Mondo gets a hangnail or something.
Well, and I guess like I'll give you a story of mine real quick. I remember one of my guys, the first time he jumped 17, he double PR jumped 17.5, and he was gripping 15.9
Mm,
on a 5 meter 195.
mhm.
And we just thought to ourselves, I'm like, man, if we could just get to that 200, you're going 18. And we worked and we worked and we worked. And next year we got on that 200, and he jumped 16.9 that day.
Mm.
And so it made me go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, something's wrong, right? Like we can't, because I think a lot of people end up being like, well, we got to go to a longer pole, or we got to go to a bigger pole. And the day he jumped 17.8, like the 540 bar, 17.8 and a half, and he almost made 550 that day, he was gripping 15.9 on a 16.200 or 205. So the same or
Yeah.
smaller pole than when he jumped
Right.
17.5, because he connected with the jump better. And I think a lot
And
of times in the pole vault, people do forget, whether it's female or male, it's like, well, how many women are really capable of jumping on a 14.7? How many men are really capable of jumping on a 17?
right.
I think a lot fewer than are actually jumping on those poles.
I
And
think
if
a lot of
people were to
yeah.
grip down a little bit, I think they would have, maybe possibly higher jumps.
Well, we were having this, Sam invited some people over after the Olympics, and the people from the town came out, and I think um, we didn't do a live. I think they did a live. I can't remember, but anyway, it was fun. It was night, and people were jumping everything. But we said the guests, all college boys and girls, I said, okay, guys, pick a pole that you can jump 5 meters on. It's a crowd of people out there. High is high. We're going to all run 12 steps, and we're going to just jump 5 meters over and over and over again.
Right.
There was one girl, and I said, hey, pick a pole you can jump 4 meters on. And so that's what they were doing. And at the end, Sam came in and jumped a few 50s and
Mhm.
for the crowd and stuff like that. But when we were out there, there was a college guy, and he was running from 10 steps on a 5 meter pole.
Wow.
But Sam was jumping 550
Right.
on a 490,
Right.
you know? And so I watched, and I said, hey, I like this guy a lot, and I hope this model works for him. But
Right.
it wouldn't be my advice. I told a little girl recently, because we're always looking at things and trying to help people.
Right.
And I saw this little girl, and she kept landing right in the pit, and she like, why am I landing right? I said, you're over gripping.
Yes.
And so she said, oh, well, I jumped so and so on this grip, and I said, where are you gripping that pole? And she said, I'm gripping it at 12.9.
Wow.
And I showed her on video, I said, you're bending this pole well over 90 degrees. I says,
Mhm.
there is no reason that someone on a 14-foot pole or shorter should be bending a pole more than 90 degrees. That is
Yeah.
totally inefficient. And so once she got that in her head, she never landed right again.
Mhm.
And the jump profile looked appropriate. Look, I
Yes.
said, now there's different ways to go both ways on this. I know, but you're asking me today what I would do, and I said I would get what I would consider a better grip for you, and I think you'll have more fun. You definitely won't hit the standard
Yeah.
on the right. um, and so we everybody has what I think is their perfect jump, and that's what I try to do. Is I say,
Right.
okay, what's your model? Okay, I think this. You need to think about this. You need to think about that. Now go to Peru and try to win a medal or whatever.
Right.
I don't try to change anybody, but you can look at it with a critical eye and say,
Right.
you know what, this cue might help you. You may have heard it before, but you hadn't heard it from these lips. And
Yes. Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
that's all the difference they need. You know.
Right. No, 100%. I mean, uh, even one time, one of my master's athletes, we're doing pole runs because that's part of our warm up every day.
I
Everybody
love
does
it. I
3
love
pole runs.
pole runs, man.
And, I'm coaching him through the pole run or whatever. And he would always text me the next day. And he texted me, he's like, oh, it's amazing how a different coaching cue makes all the difference. And I text him back and I go, I also think it's amazing how much the 10,000th time you hear something, it makes a difference. Because what I tell athletes now is like, you could do the same drill and it could look very similar with the same pole, same grip, but
Mhm.
you are at a different stage of your development and it means something different. You think about it differently, you feel it differently.
Yeah.
So it's that's part of the process too.
We were at a meet one time, and I think Johnny, he had jumped, he was a junior or something, and he jumped above 16. It was a meet
Mhm.
record or whatever, but he was listening to a coach who coached a guy who jumped about 13 feet.
Mhm.
Anyway, he comes over to me and he goes, you know what? I just heard him just remind the kid to jump up on takeoff. I think that that's what I need to do. And I go, I've been coaching you for 5 years. And I must have said that 1,000 times, and you just finally heard jump up on takeoff, and you're a 16.6 jumper. That's
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
and I'm just, but it's a different set of lips, a different ear.
yeah, yeah.
I have a question for you because
Sure.
this is actually going to come up later today. Uh, I know two kids who are in Peru
Okay.
for U20s, and their poles didn't arrive.
Oh boy.
And they're asking me, man, they're like, what do we do?
Mm.
And neither one of them are spirit guys. I see all those spirit poles in the
Yeah, yeah.
background. Um, and they said, "What do we do?" And my advice earlier was, I said, find out somebody with a pole close to what you have, and see if you can get to the practice track and jump just a couple of jumps on it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to be in the prelim today, borrowing poles and hoping it works.
Right.
And they were unsuccessful in finding anything to jump on
Huh.
yesterday.
Okay.
So they're probably going to have to grab a spirit pole
Mhm.
today. Would you what advice would you give these guys as to how to even start when they get out there?
Well, I think even just like we've been talking about throughout the podcast, I would just advise the guys be like, hey, like listen, pick that length and size of pole. Like obviously, hopefully that this is available, but pick that
Hopefully,
length and size of pole that is easy for you to jump on, and maybe go down 5 pounds if you can,
yeah,
and just warm yourself up through that. Something that
yeah,
it's like, listen, good day, bad day, tailwind, headwind, whatever. I can jump on this pole, maybe go down 5 pounds and take a jump on it. I
yeah.
know I was even in a situation one time where a guy showed up to the meet, and this is a 17 footer at the time. And his coaches weren't there, weren't showing up. And he's like, hey, would you mind me jumping on your poles? I said, yeah, no, no problem. And so the kid starts out and he just starts out his normal progression and he's just like run through, run through, run through. So there's like 10 minutes left of the warm up. I call the kid over. He's like a freshman in college at the time. And I was like, hey, would you like to jump today? And he goes, yes. And I always tell people, I'm like, you know what? It's really funny. You got to find a real stubborn person that won't do this. But when we're hanging off a cliff with one arm
Yeah.
left, we will grab your hand. So
Yeah.
he was kind of in that position. And I said, okay, well, I know you're trying to do a 7. Let's just go into a 5. What would you normally grip from a 5? He's like, 14, and I would go on 14.775. I said, okay, let's do 13.6. Let's go 14.765. So now he runs down, boom, nice blow through. We went up grip, up pole. We take a couple more jumps, and the kid almost matched his PR from 5 lefts that day.
Oh, that's great.
Right. And so it's like if they don't have the right pole combination, I think they've got to seek out comfort first. It's got to
Right.
feel easy and then work their way up, and they will be shocked at how well they jump. Because
Well,
the
I
reverse
told him, I
story,
said, try to make a bar. Find
yes,
you a pole you can think you make the opener on,
right,
and that's going to be a victory. And after
right,
you achieve that victory, let's go for another one.
yes. Because I think on the reverse end, I remember one year I was at Division III Nationals, and I was coaching a girl uh, that would end up winning that year. But one of the other teams, their poles got destroyed in transit.
Ooh.
And we literally had the same line of poles, but this girl was so frazzled because she didn't have her poles. And then I think they tried to just do their normal progression, which her being frazzled, you should have been like, all right, let's start a little smaller today.
Sure.
I think the girl might have no height or only cleared 1 bar, and she should have been like top 3.
Wow.
And so it's like, I think trying to find that comfort level first where you can feel comfortable, like actually vaulting, not just trying to get on the pole, and
Mhm.
then it'll work itself out.
Back in the days when it was hard to get poles around, remember flyaway poles?
Yes, I
Pick up,
remember.
pick up poles and they
Yeah.
carry your poles. And anyway, Sam, we were always a little concerned in those days that the poles wouldn't get there.
Yeah.
And so one thing we did is we went into the shed, and the university had a whole bunch of spirit poles, and everybody seemed to be jumping on spirit. So we said, let's look and see what pole do we think Joey and Chris and everybody at the meet is going to
Right.
have in their bag. And we settled on a 490 185. Says
Mhm.
everybody's probably got a 490 185 or 190 in their bag.
Yeah.
And we had a practice, and we marked that pole, just like you're at a club, you marked
Yeah.
it in
Yeah.
inches at the top, and we figured out where we could grip that pole and get a pretty decent performance.
Right.
So we knew, you know what, if we show up without any poles, we'll go ask one of the guys from the Air Force Academy or whatever, hey, can we use your 16-1
Yeah.
185?
Mhm.
And there's 10 of them out there. Everybody has that one. Sam went to nationals the first time in high school. I think every kid jumped on the same pole. I said we could have brought 3 poles for this whole
Right.
competition. I
Right.
think every boy in his particular division jumped on like a 15-1 175.
Yeah.
And that was the pole. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you serious? Every single guy in the final is jumping on
Right.
this
Yeah.
pole,
No, it is wild. Well, I tell people something. It's like it is interesting too. Like it seems like certain heights, kind of you have to be on certain poles for certain heights. Obviously there's outliers depending on what size and shape you are as a human being. But
Mhm.
it's like because I'll hear sometimes wild stuff. Like someone tried to tell me that they knew someone who jumped 13.6 on a 12-foot pole, and I was like, I think you're mistaken. I think they were going because the pole was broken. They're like, no, it says 12 over here. I'm like, yeah, that's the plug size, not the length, you know? Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is wild. And I remember, I don't know if you know the name Mike Lorick. He started the club Vertical Assault. He's out in California now.
Okay.
And Mike always used to say, he's like, yeah, I feel like if I just went to the state meet, I should just bring the poles that I know everybody needs, and nobody else has to bring poles today. We all
Well,
jump out of the same bag.
Sam and Jack Witt used to say when they were competing against each other in college, um, Sam said, Jack, how many poles do you actually jump on in a competition? And Jack says 3. And Sam goes, I only jump on 2. So why are we schlepping around these huge, heavy bags of
Yeah.
bowls? But that's just kind of the wisdom. You're going to take them all, and the at most meets where, you can come in lower, I think it would be easy for a kid to borrow a pole.
Mhm.
These bigger meets like U20s,
Mhm.
they got an opener, and
Yeah,
these
yeah,
kids, it's probably 16 feet for the
yeah,
opener. And so, like, these kid's a high school kid. Both of them
yeah.
are high school. Well, one's college, one's high
Yeah,
school.
but still, look,
Yeah,
you'd rather comfortably get into the pit, feel like you could vault, and try to like hope that
right.
like by the third attempt you get on a big enough pole, than
Yeah,
try to overreach and you're just trying to get in the pit because that's you're not clearing a bar like that.
yeah. That's what I told them. You try to find something you can clear a bar on, whatever that bar is, and tell the officials, put it at the opener, please. Sam does that a lot. We
Mhm.
used to go to meets, at the NCAA level, and the officials would put the bungee at, I remember, it's kind of standard. They put it at 18 feet.
Right,
I'm like, there's only one 18-foot vaulter in this whole
right,
competition. I said, Sam, go ask them to put it on the opener. And they lower it to 5 meters. And
right,
and Sam would warm up each time, 5 meters, please. And guys don't want to do that. They just
right,
sit there and reach their toes for
right,
that 550 bungee. And now at the elite level, they want to put it on 19 feet.
right.
And Sam is like, hey, put it on 40. 40 is the opener. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
get
yeah,
my first pole out. Please put it on 40.
yeah,
and
yeah.
and and ask for what you want.
Right. Well, it makes sense. Um, look, I have to thank you so much. I know we've been on here forever. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I guess we end the podcast?
Um, well, I appreciate you having me on, and it's interesting. This all started from that post about both of these guys are pushing over 4 feet.
Right,
What's the best model? Well, obviously, everybody wants to be on the biggest equipment they can handle.
right.
But I think both of these guys are amazing in their efficiency.
Yeah,
And so, I think both of them, everybody respects Sam because of his efficiency, you
right.
know, and that's the answer to that is, God gave us all a certain set of skills. And
Yes.
just like I said, Sam, he knows on his best day, he's around 6 meters. So, you know, Sam said to me one time, he goes, well, what if I wanted to break the world record? I said, I think you need to move to France and work with Philippe. I said, I can help you jump 19 feet, son. I can help you jump 19 feet all the time. But that world record stuff, that 20-foot stuff, man, that's other people have that knowledge.
Well, and I think too, like you're bringing up, and like we've talked about at those higher levels, I mean, it's by fractions of margins that you're producing that difference.
That's right.
And
And
if
it's very dangerous.
yo
People don't get the danger part of it.
right,
Remember, Renault broke the world record, and the
I
next jump,
remember.
he almost ended his career.
Yes,
He was rejected back onto the
yes,
concrete after, and lost a whole season. So trying to do these things is a completely different thing from competing in pole vault. Competing
mhm,
in pole vault, having fun is one thing, but saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to reach, and break records." Well, you may break some other stuff too. It's all
yes.
part of your personal risk
Right,
level of risk.
and I think even, like, you're bringing up, like, and we talked about earlier in the podcast, there's sacrifices to be made.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, I remember a few years ago, I had a guy that started jumping with me, pretty explosive guy. So he's jumped 17 with as little as 14.4 grip.
wow,
And,
wow,
explosive guy, his PR is 17.9, and he's post collegiate at the time. He's like, listen, I really want to jump 18 plus. I want to go to USA's. I said, no problem. I go, you could definitely do that. That's a few inches. However, I go, you live in New York City. I need to see you 3 days a week in a jump session. Then we
yeah,
got to do a training session after.
yeah,
Then 3 days a week, you got to do your own training session. You can
yeah,
take Sundays off.
yeah.
How is your now fiance going to like that?
Yeah,
Are you going to be able to work full time? So I'm like,
yeah,
we will be in Oregon, I promise.
yeah,
You will jump 18,
yeah,
but probably not much higher.
yeah.
And you might not have your girl, and you might not have your job.
Well,
You
and
got to weigh
Sam,
this out.
we decided that Sam was going to come out of college early, probably the only reason we were able to do that is because I still had keys to the high school, so we could jump there. We had
Right.
facility. He knew he was going to have a coach.
Mhm.
We had some physio support or whatever.
Mhm.
And because he had a tiny little Nike contract, he wasn't going to have to work. And
Mhm.
so for at least that next few years, we knew, okay, we have time and we're going to just keep getting a little better.
Right.
But we're not going to stray away from what we believe is our correct way of doing it. And
Right.
so by that means, Sam got a little better, a little better. So he never made I think the day at Texas, he went from an 18.4 guy to a 19-foot guy, which was crazy. An
Right.
8 foot,
Yeah.
but he didn't jump 19 feet again for 2 more years.
Right.
Uh, one last story before I let you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're talking about, wanting to do X, and being kind of working against yourself. There was a young pro who came up to me after a meet and he had jumped 550. And he said, Coach K, I need you to tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I said, I watched you, and what you're doing wrong is you want to jump 590 so bad, you've forgotten how to jump 560.
Right.
And I said, you have to understand all of this stuff is cool and amazing, but you've got to do the pretty darn good stuff really, really solid.
Yeah.
And that other stuff will happen. But
Right.
if you just focus all your training this year on jumping 590, you're jump 50 a lot because you're not going to move that big pole in a lot of circumstances or whatever.
Mhm.
You don't feel great, the wind's not good or whatever. I said, so, you know, 50 is amazing, jump that. 60 is amazing, jump that. 70 is amazing, jump that. And then then above 70, then you can let your fangs come out, and
Right.
get on
Yep.
that big old thing and try to meet that goal. But don't forget about the little things that made you good and stay with those. And over the long term, you'll be much better, I think. We started out we wanted Sam to be able to jump 570 every day, 18.8 every day. And by
Right.
getting
Because
so
if
solid at
that's your
18.8, it turned
baseline.
into 19. It turned into 19 at something like 129 meets now.
Right.
And it just by accidentally doing the small things good. I say that too. Sam does little things well, and by stacking up the little things, he gets 6 inches.
Yeah.
You might not normally
I don't know if
do.
you ever heard this saying, right? So Louis Simmons from Westside Barbell, the coach who started that gym, he always said a pyramid can only be as high or as tall as the base is long.
That's right.
And I think that's what people forget. And that base of your pyramid is all those basic fundamental things that you're talking about. It's like
Yeah.
if you don't have your rundown, if you don't have your carry, if that run, carry, plant, takeoff is not set,
Yeah.
forget about all that other stuff, you
You're
know?
exactly right. My power cord slipped out.
Oh,
My
no
computer
worries.
was reminding me. You're exactly right. To that last point, we believe in the pole run so much. And
Mhm.
Sam's run is just so grooved. And that's why one reason he can jump consistently well is because his run is so solid.
Yeah.
And he has gotten faster, obviously.
Mhm.
I think some meets he ran 9.9 in Paris on a
Oh, wow.
couple of attempts,
Mhm.
but normally he's around 9.7 now. But
Yeah.
that's smoking fast for
Right.
Sam.
Yes.
That ain't even close to Mondo fast. I've always warned him, hey, don't race the fast guys, and definitely don't race the fast girls because you might get embarrassed.
Yeah, yeah. But awesome. Yeah. I just want to thank you again. I think this has been a great episode. A lot of great knowledge and experience that you shared with everybody today. Um, yeah, just
Well, I
thank you so
appreciate.
much.
I love to talk to other coaches with other perspectives because I learn, and man, I'm gonna probably get in my book and write down a couple things you said here at the end,
Oh,
because I'm nabbing ideas from other people.
yeah, no,
Always.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. Uh, Also, if you could do me a favor, uh,
Okay.
from that book where you had the marks from the straight pole era, and if
Sure.
you could send me a picture of that,
Sure.
I
I'll
would
do that.
love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. I will
All right.
send it right after this.
All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Coach.
Take
Have a good
care.
one.
All right. Bye.
Here we go.